In a world of achievement and success, limitations are at best tolerated and most likely resented. I mean, who wants to live a life with limited resources, limited funds, limited abilities, limited opportunities? They seem, well, limiting. Yet, some serious limitations can actually display the works of God, as is clearly seen in the life and the miracles of Jesus. In Mark 6, after the 12 disciples of Jesus had spent some time with him, he sent them out in pairs, gave them power to deal with evil spirits, and they returned all excited to report what they had done and taught. And because there were so many people coming and going, they couldn't even eat. And Jesus said, "Hey, come with me to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many people recognized them leaving, and word got out. From the surrounding towns, people went running on boat, and they got there ahead of them. And when Jesus landed and saw the large crowd, his heart was touched, and he had compassion on them, because they seemed like sheep without a shepherd. And he settled down to teach them many things. So, when the disciples thought this was long enough, they interrupted. "We're a long way out in the country, and it's getting late. Let them go now so they can buy themselves something to eat in the surrounding villages and farms." But he answered them, and Jesus said, "You give them something to eat." And they replied, "Are you serious? You want us to spend a fortune on food for this supper?" Jesus said, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And when they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Jesus had them to have all the people sit in groups by 50 and 100 on the fresh grass. And then, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and lifting them to heaven, he prayed. And he gave thanks, and he broke the loaves of bread. And then he gave them to the disciples, and they in turn gave them to the people. He did the same with the fish. Everybody ate and was satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets full of pieces of bread and fish. And more than 5,000 people were at the supper. Jesus did an amazing miracle because there was limited food. So let's first explore his heart for these downtrodden people. It said that when he looked at them, they seemed like sheep without a shepherd. And his heart was touched with compassion for them. Please realize that nothing has changed in his heart for his people, for you. When you feel as though you're wandering around aimlessly, or that everything is falling apart and that no one really notices, his heart is turned in warmth toward you. And I beg you, turn your heart toward him in warmth and love also. Jesus used this dilemma of the limited food to reveal himself. Using 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, he fed 5,000. And it made a huge statement. It made the statement that he was all-powerful God and not limited by limitations. That in fact, limitations serve his pleasure. Remember the man born with the limitation of blindness? It's in John chapter 9. I'll read the first 3 verses. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life." Let me remind you of other times that God did the extraordinary like this. Abraham and Sarah became the father and mother to the nations in old age. And Timothy was fearful and shy, but he became a key leader in the church of Ephesus. Moses led the slaves out of Egypt when he was 80. So here's our key spiritual insight. Our limitations are channels of God's greater work. It's fair to say that our limitations can actually be considered gifts. In our weaknesses, God's power is displayed. And that's in 1 Corinthians 12:9. Our limitations open the door for God's power and grace. We reap the benefits when we embrace them instead of being angry. We find ourselves more dependent on God, and we become more sensitive and less judgmental toward others. Now is the day to embrace the most unlikely of gifts, your limitations, and see them as an invitation to surrender and trust to Him.